Hey, sports fans! Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast recording / live show. I am pleased to be joined this week and every other week by Andrew Combo Celep of Combo's Court. You might have heard him on his own podcast, and he's going to join me, every other week to discuss the NBA and answer your questions and just get a little deeper into what's happening on the court and off. So, Andrew, how's it going, my man?
I'm doing well. Coach Nick, thank you so much for having me on your platform, man. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to get this done.
Well, hey, we've always had great conversations on your pod when you've had me on, so I figured, you know what, let's see how this goes. And I'm pledging to do my pod now, getting back to it. It's been a long time, but we got a lot of people who are always flocking to these things, either live now or in the pod, so I'm excited to have you. I'll call you Combo from now on. I know as I am Coach Nick, you'll be Combo. And we'll break it down. So don't forget, if you want to grab me and our attention right away, the Super Chat's a great way to do it on YouTube, and I'll get you right to the top. And then otherwise, you can throw a couple questions in there in the comments and see maybe it'll bubble up and we'll check it out. But at the very least, let's talk some NBA. We'll talk. Let's talk Steph and the Warriors right now. The game that just finished last night against the Nets was an interesting game, and I'm preparing a video, by the way. It'll be dropping tomorrow, first thing. I couldn't quite get it done today, but I'm going to get it done for tomorrow. But obviously, there's a thing that's going on in the third quarter of Warriors games that's pretty crazy, and I'm wondering if you've been noticing just how dominating they've been.
But it's always been like that with the Warriors, right? I felt like they were always a third quarter team for a long time. This team is honestly better than I thought they'd be. I didn't really have them as a title contender coming into the season. Coming onto your show with full transparency, I always like to brag when I get it right, so I have to be honest. But what are your thoughts? Like, why do you feel like they're such a great third quarter team?
Well, I was trying to sort of do some research to figure out, okay, or even just watch clips and figure out, are they doing some crazy adjustments all of a sudden? And for instance, last night they played triangle and two. They played some zone. They'd have guys either on Patty Mills and KD or KD and Harden with the other three guys in a triangle all around the lane. But they did most of that in the second quarter. So when they opened up in the third, they were pretty much straight man-to-man. They threw it out there at the very end of the quarter a little bit. So that wasn't it. All of a sudden getting out of the box defensively. And I have some numbers I just want to share with you that you'll see in the actual in the video. But let me just grab the third quarter advanced stats. So if you isolate just the third quarter, the Golden State Warriors, excuse me, they're tied with the Jazz for offensive rating lead at 117.2. And the other teams below them, 3, 4, 5, they're all within a couple points of that. So that's not really, a big lead they have. But when you go to the defensive rating in the third quarter, their defensive rating is 83.3. The next team in the second place are the Nuggets at 93.6. So they're 10 points ahead of anybody else defensively. And then their net rating is what is outrageous. It's 33.9. Basically plus 34. And the Nuggets are second at 14. So you got to imagine they're beating teams by 20 points in net rating in the third quarter alone, just in terms of differential. That's what's insane. And obviously the defensive rating is what we're looking at. So that is the question. And maybe we'll tap into some of your experience as a pro player. My take on it was, after looking at all the footage from last night and a couple other games, was that They rotate really perfectly. They are always in good position early. So in my mind, that is going to eventually wear you down. And then when that will wear you down is the third quarter. And then you get a little bit frustrated, you get a little bit impatient, and thinking, the game starts to get away from you a little bit. You're down 10, down 11. Now you start to shoot a couple quick shots, plays right in their hands. And that's what it feels like to me, is that it just kind of wears them down over the first 24 minutes. And then it's just, by natural osmosis, that defense will kick in and you'll start missing a lot more shots.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to Draymond, to be honest. He's just one of the greatest help defenders to ever play. Him and Scottie Pippen come to mind right away as anchors and just defensive players, and be able to change the impact of the game so much. And him coming back from the Olympics has just been great. I feel like all these players that play in the Olympics, they really get something from it and come back better. I think there's a lot of value. Even Ricky Rubio, man, even his experience in the Olympics. But I just like everything the Warriors are doing, and their defense has been, you're right, outstanding. You mentioned the Nuggets, which is kind of off topic, but their defense has been great as well. And kudos to Mike Malone and Aaron Gordon, who I think is such a big part of that. But yeah, those two teams are playing such great defense.
Yeah, for sure, and I really like that Aaron Gordon trade. When they're at full speed, and they have the roster is completely healthy. Jokic is not getting the kind of shine he should be. He's probably deserves even more hype, even though he's gotten it in the past.
I predicted him for MVP this year. Do you think it'll happen?
Oh, maybe, but I think it's weird. The Nuggets are in a bit of obscurity right now. They're not really bubbling up in terms of people on everyone's mind. But he should be, and like Luka's kind of dropped a little bit. And the funny thing about Luka, we could talk about in a little bit, is it sounds like it's a shit show over there, but in terms of their record and whatever, they're doing great. They're doing fine. So I've been trying to figure that out exactly how that works, but we'll get into that because I even prepared a Mavs breakdown from like a week ago, and then it was going to be like, what's wrong with the Mavs? But it was like, you know what, they're doing fine. There's nothing wrong with them really. But when you say Draymond, it's spot on. I mean, obviously he is. I've argued that he's the best defender of his era and maybe even all time. I think pound for pound, what he does all around the court, it's just remarkable, and the way he quarterbacks it. But the guy that doesn't get enough run or enough hype is Kevon Looney. This is a guy, and I was almost thinking, you know what? Maybe they should start Bielitsa and really make it fun, because now you can get a guy who can pass out of the high post. He can stretch the floor. He doesn't really play defense, but he's okay. I mean, he probably is worse than okay, but he's not like completely terrible. But when you watch what Looney did last night and how they were going to try and attack him, he had an ISO against KD. They're like, great, they got to switch, and he moved his feet, kept him in front, and then KD just drops the ball out of bounds along the baseline. And you can see KD just being frustrated. He couldn't get by him. So I think that when you have Looney, when you have Draymond out there, and I'm missing one person. Who's the other? Oh, Wiggins.
Wiggins.
Yeah. You have three really good players. But here's what's not fair. Then they could bring in Iguodala. Then they could bring in Gary Payton II. That is when you're starting to think, geez, they have so much depth defensively that it's like they're going to be in games no matter what they do on the other side.
Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting how much of basketball is just having good two-way players on your team. That's what it's come down to the Wizards right now. They just got a lot of players who can play offense. They got a lot of players who can play defense. And I feel like the Warriors is the same way. And Steph Curry is an underrated defender. I mean, he's not as bad as he's not Trae Young as a defender. He's a lot better than Trae. I know people try and compare Trae to Steph. So I think when you just have a lot of good two-way players, it bodes well. And we're seeing that with the Warriors on the West Coast, and we're seeing that with the Wizards on the East Coast. So,
For sure. And then you also have even Jordan Poole and Damian Lee. They're trying. They give out a lot of energy, and they're not like great playmakers in the defensive end, but they will hustle, and they will get in positions, and they will fight. And so it's I'm kind of getting 77 Portland Trailblazers vibes. You're probably too young to remember anything about that team. But
was that Bill Walton?
Yeah, that was Bill Walton's team, and they went 50-10 to start the year. Oh no, that might have been this. Wait, they won a title. They might have gone 50-10 the next year, and then Walton hurt his foot, and then that was it for everything, which really was a bummer because they were the epitome of teamwork on both sides. And so Steph,
he had a second stint with the Celtics, which he played pretty well, even though he was like a sixth man, right?
Yeah, no, he was great. We got a chance to see him, on a prime stage again in '86, which is great to see for that. Yeah. But when he was in his prime and young, I mean, nobody played the position better than him, and so you can argue that no one plays Steph's position better than Steph. So they have the Walton and the Steph are kind of the superstar they have in that team, and everyone else sort of fits their role perfectly. And so I'm kind of getting those vibes, especially because it's on both sides. And I think it was Bobby Knight. Somebody had said that defense is just offense without the ball. And the Warriors are showing that because it's literally like offense, the way they move together and the way they cover ground and help each other. It literally, everything is triggered by where the ball goes, just like it's triggered on the offensive side too. So it's been a real joy. I mean, you might want to call me some sort of Warriors homer. I've always sort of enjoyed the way the Warriors play, but there isn't a coach out there, as far as I'm concerned, that would not really enjoy watching. I mean, listen, offense is amazing, and here's what's also the interesting thing is it's demoralizing because they'll run their offense to death and they'll pass the ball all over the place and make you work. Then they're going to make you work really hard and limit your possessions, limit your ability to get into the middle of the floor. And then you have a guy named Steph Curry who's going to drop these ridiculous bombs on you 5, 6, 7 times in a game. it's demoralizing. It breaks your spirit. That's the other thing about the third quarter, because enough of those possessions, you're getting into the 40s and 50s by the third quarter. That's just going to be like, man, I give up. And we saw Steve Nash do that last night. He took out Harden and KD, to start the fourth quarter. They never came back. So that tells you something.
Yeah, and I think Gary Payton, too, is such an interesting player. And I want to see if there's a trend. I talk about this on a podcast that is not out yet. I actually recorded it today. That if we're going to see like the Bruce Brown type role become a trend in the NBA, because I think Gary Payton, too, is that type of player, a guy who could guard guards, but then do some of the stuff that bigs could do on the offensive end, like how Bruce Brown is a roller and how Gary Payton, too, could be even a lob threat at times. So I want to see if that becomes a trend and it's a new wrinkle for the Warriors. I like it. And we know, me and you agree that should be Russ's role with the Lakers.
Oh, well, should we get into that? Because that's a whole other discussion.
I think we talked about that on my podcast, but yeah, I mean, we definitely agree on that one. And I've been saying it for a while, and you've been saying it for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I was on another podcast, and they just tagged me because they grabbed that little soundbite of me talking about Russ, and I didn't share that one because I just didn't feel like getting set on fire. But I talked about this audio wise, and we said it like, Russ to me is probably the worst skilled superstar that we've ever had. And I do feel like the Lakers fans who were really excited about getting him, we're getting a taste of the Russell Westbrook experience. So and it's not like great, Bob. It is, he even, like, for instance, the game he had 25 and whatever, 25, 10 and 8 against somebody last week. I decided to go through the other plays that he was doing, that all of his plays. Some good stuff, good plays, okay. But when you watch some of the turnovers and you watch some of the missed shots, it's like they're as bad as they could be. It's just all over the place. It's like really good and really bad and everything in between. And I don't know, for a coach, it's just it wears on my brain. It's really hard to watch.
I guess the Lakers' struggles is a combination. I mean, I guess they're staying afloat, so you could call it struggles if you want. LeBron is out. All the stuff you say about Westbrook. AD is good, but everybody knows he could be better if he kind of maybe took off seasons more seriously. I don't know. I'm not with the guy, but I think that could be a thing. Like, him, Luka, and Harden kind of play their way into shape. So I think it's a combination of a bunch of different things when it comes to the Lakers. But how much of their struggles do you feel is like LeBron just not being there, or is more than that?
Oh, well, LeBron's going to eliminate a lot of other issues. Obviously, he smoothed everything out, and so that is something. But I think there's a fundamental flaw with having these three guys on the court together, and that's a problem. Now, I get burned every time I pick against the LeBron team, and I do it. I still do it, and I shouldn't because you have to know better. But it's hard to picture them finding success in the playoffs. I just don't see it. We have is Frank Vogel on the hot seat now? But not that matters because we've seen enough teams win a title switching coaches in the middle of the season that it's not a thing anymore, especially with a LeBron team that's even done it. So that might not be a thing. But we have the super chat. So let's get to that because I want to make sure that everyone gets their the priority billing when we do that. So Next Level, thank you so much for being a super chat fan. I really appreciate it. And his question is, or their question is, Kuminga is the biggest surprise of the Warriors season. If he can provide 10 to 15 minutes a game off the bench of positive minutes, that's really scary for the rest of the NBA. And again, another great point. And I forgot about that because I did my list of players that he brings in who are defensive players. So you have Iguodala comes off the bench, and they're throwing Kuminga out their last 3 or 4 games. And yes, he is really, really good. He's got an NBA body, right? He can really move.
Yes. That's one thing that you could never deny about Kuminga.
Yeah, but he's going to suffer from a rookie getting rookie calls. They're just not going to give him. I don't see, and I think he got that last night too. A couple that were iffy, they're just going to default and give it to him. But if he can get through that, and then maybe earn a little bit of respect throughout the rest of this season, that maybe by the playoffs, and he'll be viable. Offensively, it's the one place they're going to struggle with him. Finding a fit. Gary Payton doesn't stretch the floor really, but he is finding a nice niche in there offensively. And again, what we also didn't say about the Warriors is that they're going to add future All-Star Wiseman. What's Wiseman's first name? James Wiseman. It sounds weird to me. And then they're also there's some guy named Clay that's going to come in the picture probably in January.
That?
And and Clay will probably be maybe like 75% if we're lucky. But you know what?
Who knows what's going to happen with that coach? Nick, he could be 100 or he could be 50. We don't know.
Yeah. So we'll pick 75. And but 75 of Clay is still better than what they have right now. It'll make them better.
So much gravity.
Yeah,
so much gravity. Yeah.
So there just doesn't seem to be any other way around it. You would have to pick the Warriors right now based on what we've seen for the first 12, 14 games. They have to be the absolute favorites to get to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, you mentioned the Kuminga pick, and we cover the draft pretty often on my podcast. And what I liked about that pick is that the Warriors didn't listen to the noise, because everything around, like, Kuminga was sliding towards that draft, and the Warriors didn't care that what everybody else was saying, what everybody else was saying about Kuminga. They just felt like they had their guy, he could help them, and they didn't listen to noise, and they make their pick. Like, I like teams like that they take their information, what they see, and they make the pick they feel is best.
For sure. Now, by the way, Wiseman is also one of those people who they might want to like make a move on to get a veteran or something like that. And if I were another team, I might even do that, because I think Wiseman's going to be terrific. I don't care what anyone said about last year's performance, because last year's team is radically different, and it shouldn't give you any bearing on what he might do. Oh, Otto Porter comes in, who had been a really good defender at times, and at the very least has a good basketball IQ and knows where to be and can be effective as a eighth man or whatever he is now coming off the bench. So again, this is a really, really good team, and it is great to see, because I wouldn't trade Wiseman very quickly, because he is the future, and you want to be able to bridge that where you can still give Steph a great chance of winning a title without leaving the cupboard completely bare. I did see on Twitter our old friend of the breakdown, Mort Jensen, was saying through Forbes magazine that he was pitching a trade that dealt with maybe getting Harrison Barnes to the Warriors and maybe using some of these young guys who are really good. Luke might be at the end of his rope here. They might end up pulling the plug and tanking with the rest of the Kings season. So that's an interesting thing, because you bring Harrison Barnes back as a guy who's really developed into a legit scorer and can play defense. I think he's
even
right in.
Better now than then, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I got in trouble by tweeting, and I will never delete the tweet, saying in 2013 that he was going to be the best player on the Warriors. This is before Steph became Steph. And people love to throw it in my face, but I'm like, you know what? At the time, he could guard four positions, elite level. He was an elite shooter from three. He had some ability.
Well, his draft workouts looked amazing.
Yeah, and he had some moves against Denver in that series, the year before they won the title, that were like, whoa, this guy is everything. So. That's why I wrote that tweet. And even still, the trajectory had been a little rocky for him, but he's a legit scorer, and he can play defense. And I'm sure he'd already been there. So it would be a really interesting thing. I don't know how much they'd have to give up to get him, but in theory, it would just sort of shore up anything else. But if that required giving up a guy like Jordan Poole, I think I'd be upset with that, because I like Jordan Poole's origin story now and the way
I wouldn't give up Poole.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see if what Vlade has up his sleeves in Sacramento. But it's an excuse me. I'm still battling whatever this cold is, but I'm still trying to figure out what's going to happen. So who else in the West do we have to really worry about? Because it's a weird start to the season. Certain people are not doing as well as we thought they would do.
I mean, the Jazz could be good.
You can write that down every year, right?
The Nuggets, when Jamal Murray comes back, I think they could be really interesting.
Do we have a sense of when that's going to happen?
Well, I think there's a sense that it'll happen before Kawhi comes back.
Yeah, well,
So that's why.
I can't picture Kawhi coming back. I mean, when did he hurt the knee in June, right?
Yeah.
And so is it not a year anymore? So if it's 10 months, then he's going to come back without even ever having played much before the playoffs start, and expected to be great. I don't know. I don't know how I see that.
Yeah. I always found the Nuggets really interesting. And then when they remember when Aaron Gordon came in and Jamal Murray was still healthy, and the way they were playing at that point, if they could get back to that, I think they're legit title contenders, especially with how the league looks, and it's just wide open, So it really depends on how Jamal comes back. But, I mean, Aaron on defense is just such a difference maker, and we're seeing it with their defensive rating. So I just think they're a really interesting team with Jokic playing at an MVP level. If Murray could come back at, 90%, hopefully?
Yeah.
I think they could be, really interesting and even a title contender, especially the way the Lakers look now.
Yeah, right.
And Milwaukee and the Nets.
Yeah. Well, the Nuggets are third in the defensive rating so far after 14 games. The Clippers are second, which is interesting. And the Clippers are kind of low key under the radar here at 9-5. I went to go see them on what is time? I was just there on.
Yeah, I think you posted a selfie or something.
Yeah, well, I was filming something. I was there on Thursday for sure. I went to the Lakers game last night. I've been at Staples. Excuse me. What are we calling it? It's going to be called now
Crypto.com
Crypto.com Arena. So it's not even bad enough. It's not Crypto Arena, which that's not so bad. But Crypto.com Arena is almost like it's like saying HTTP:// or something. I don't know if they needed to add that, but anyway, I was there and they looked. Actually, wait a minute. Did the Clippers get beat? I think they got beat. I think the Heat handled them. So I'm not so sure what's going on with the Clippers, but they're kind of fun to watch. And when they're engaged, so last night was the game I saw. So Reggie did not seem interested at all in playing the first two, Reggie Jackson. And then all of a sudden you could see it. He's like, F this, I'm going to let's just turn this thing on. And he was awesome and just couldn't be stopped on offense. And that spurred them to a big lead and they were able to, the win going away. So obviously a guy like that. Now, Eric Bledsoe is another key who's played better the last two times I've been there, because obviously he's another guy who I get frustrated with, to the nth degree watching, and feel like he's the guy that puts a ceiling on them overall the more he's got to play.
Yeah, I mean, look, you didn't mention PG-13, and I think, remember all that Twitter hate he was getting, man?
Oh, so Thursday when they got
people were in my DMs just saying the most ridiculous stuff about Paul George during the bubble season, and I just had to keep on defending the guy.
Well. Yeah, and people at Staples, he missed a shot against the Heat, and they were yelling playoff P and all sorts of really disrespectful stuff for a home game. So, but
why him? He just seems like such a laid back guy. Why do you think he gets that kind of negative attention? I just don't understand it.
Well, he's been pretty forthright in some of these interviews about his mental state, and that's frowned upon in the sports world. You can't show any weakness or whatever, and it's a bunch of
even in 2021.
No, yeah, it's definitely BS, but I definitely think in 2021, certainly if you spend any time on Twitter, you can see that there's still a caveman mentality to a lot of this. I thought Paul George was terrific in last year's playoffs. He carried them in a situation where they were expecting to have Kawhi, and he gets hurt and goes down. So, I think he's proven himself plenty. And you watch him last night, he's got that swagger, and he backs it up. He misses a couple of these shots that are really crazy hard that they make out of that offense, which I'm not even that excited about their offense. Although they run literally straight triangle sets some of the time. It's crazy. And so did the team that they played last night that they beat. Who did they beat last night?
Spurs?
Oh, the Spurs. Spurs were running a lot of pinch post. But I saw a center opposite right out of the triangle offense last night. That got it's basically what Kobe would have ran with the Lakers back in the day, where they set a cross screen for him to fill the low post on the strong side when the corner is filled already, and got a nice little turnaround jumper out of that. So that was really interesting. And Ty Lue has in the past shown us that he can have some clever offense.
He can make adjustments.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? They'll throw spaghetti at that wall and change things up as much as they possibly can and see what works. So you can't say that they don't try. It might be almost too much, but they certainly are aware of those things and do make the other team have to adjust back. So they're around and they're in there. I think one of the autopsies they might have to do more, sooner than later would be the Bucks and what's going on with them. Do you have any insights into why they're struggling at 6 and 8?
Well, a lot of it is injuries, right? I mean, just players aren't available, and I think they'll get back to business. But they are digging themselves in a deep hole, so we're going to see if they can get back up to that 1 or 2 spot. I don't know if that's going to be easy for them at this point because they keep digging more and more of a hole for themselves.
Yeah, Middleton is obviously the biggest key because he's the guy that they'll rely on down the stretch of games. And Giannis has not been the guy to be able to overwhelm the other team and carry these guys to victory. Brook Lopez hasn't been playing either, and I like to think that's something, but I'm not sure he moves the needle as much as they would hope. But he's a starter on a title team, so obviously he's important. But you would think that they wouldn't be 6 and 8. And that is an interesting thing because this is now a 14-game sample size. It's pretty big for a season. This is not like a 3 or 4 games. So they need to turn that around and certainly get healthy. I think while we're talking, I might even quickly try and do a Chris Middleton injury update, unless you know right off the top of your head what his story is.
I think he's coming back soon, but you should probably look that up, Coach Nate.
Yeah, I have to let me do my NBC Sports or whatever they Roto World changed to NBC Sports. But anyway. His return to action on Wednesday evening against the Lakers is he'll come back tonight. Okay, there you go, against the Lakers. So we'll find out if he's what he looks like and how that looks. Let's see here. What was his issue? Ankle? No. Conditioning. So he was not in shape. But that's not why. Oh, I see. He got COVID. I forgot about that. He got COVID on November 14th. And then that's why. So they have to get him back into shape. So he should play tonight, and he'll be a welcome return for them for sure. What else we talk about? Let's see here. Let me make sure we don't have any other super chats because I hate to miss those. If you want to, if anybody wants. To. Oh my goodness!
So people are asking questions. How do we?
Well, if you're on the live chat, you'll see them on the YouTube if you log in there, and I got them here, and I'll just I'll yell them out to everybody. Chaser, thank you, so very, very generous super chat. Thank you so much. They say, in my opinion, Wiseman is the key for completing their roster. I'll give them height. Oh, it'll give them height, rim protection, and rebounding. This team is 12 deep, and Steph's playing the best defense he ever has. Phoenix might make a run too. Yeah, Steph is playing is really good. Now, Steph does that thing where he reaches in as much as possible and dares the referee to call it, right? And they don't. In fact, I'm going to probably start teaching that to the younger players that I know. And with a certain technique, I think you could really be able to create havoc on the defensive end at most levels without being so afraid, like not to reach, like they used to say all the time. I think there's ways to do it where you can get loose balls or get deflections and steals without committing fouls.
Well, if you do it for the whole game, I guess you put pressure on the referees not to be able to call it every time, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like those guys who pressure full court for the whole game. Like, you can't just call 5 straight fouls on a guy doing that.
Well, at the NBA level, at the high school level, knowing the referees that I've seen, yeah, they'll call you for 8 fouls if they could without blinking.
Yeah, like at the college or pro level, they're not just gonna foul somebody out, especially Steph. I mean, look, it's Steph. They're not gonna take him off the floor. I mean,
right? Yeah, so
he's the guy that people pay to see.
Right, and we can't ignore that. That is something. Although like AD, for instance, gets thrown out of the game, and I think he said, I think he wanted to get out of there because he knew they weren't going to win. But he gets thrown out because his shoe comes off. And by the way, I could rant for 20 minutes about how shoes should never come off in a game, but his shoe comes off, and they don't wait for him to put it back on before they inbound the ball with the other team, let him go, and he starts ranting and raving, and they just kicked him out. But and by the way, talk about privilege. For a guy to think that the referee should wait for him to put his shoe back on, I mean, there's no obligation or anything about the rules that says that. So that was interesting. But it happens. We definitely see the referees be a little bit more judicious with their techs if it's a second one or kick them out for the most part. But that said, we could talk about a little bit more about the refereeing and how that's changed what the game is like right now.
Yeah.
And then I definitely want to also get to the Phoenix might make a run too. We should talk about Phoenix, but the from Chaser's comment super chat. But the point about the referees is I was sitting 4 rows back on the baseline last night, thanks to my buddy Eric who took me. And, you can see there, I would say there was probably, 10 drives they didn't call fouls. So they would have immediately called a foul in years past. And I like it. I think the defense has a chance finally to move their feet, get in position, a little contact, whatever, and they're not blowing that whistle. And I think maybe fans are responding to that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for the most part, fans like it. They like the physicality back in the NBA. That's from what I'm hearing. I know some of the star players aren't too happy about it, like Trey throwing some light jabs. And I think James Harden as well has been upset. But I kind of don't blame them because I feel like they're getting the least amount of calls than anybody. Not exactly in terms of stats, just I feel like they're being focused upon, and with the refs like almost targeting them because they're like the poster boy for this for these flopping rules and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Harden because obviously they're trying to clean up a lot of the stuff that he's been doing, and as they should. But then they've kind of gone way too far the other way, and we've been seeing some of these calls or non-calls.
I think he'll even out though, Coach Nick.
I hope so. But I do feel like most of his opponents are extremely happy to see him get the shaft, no matter how much, because of how hard it was for the last several years what he was doing. But there are a couple of these plays that are just like mind-boggling. How are you not calling that foul for Harden because the guy's got his hands all over him and he's hitting them and it's crazy. And they're looking for that certain kind of foul they don't want to call, but that ain't it on some of them. And so yeah.
I mean, James Harden shoots the ball so well. I think he'll adjust and start shooting to get better.
Yeah.
He's just like he's like James Harden is an elite shooter. So I think this is like, I was almost more worried about Trey because he's not the shooter and he's not as strong as James. James has just not been in the greatest shape yet, and I think he'll get into it, and I think he'll get back to form. I don't think anybody's skeptical that James won't get back to what he was, right?
Well, he's under 20 points a game for the first time since his third year in the league, and he's shooting 43% from the field overall and 39% from three. So he's actually shooting way better than his career average from three. So his 2-point percentage is just much lower. It's going to go up. He'll probably creep back up above 50. He's at 47.4 right now. So. But it might take him a season to kind of fully figure this out, and then another off season to kind of then adjust again. Because when he prepares for that season, those step backs that he's getting away with that are not travels, those are all so refined, and the timing is so perfect to get it so it's not a travel, that he's going to probably need an off season to figure out to get himself tuned up back the way he needs to get success back in the NBA based on what they're doing with their with the contact.
Well, this is not the season to take a season, especially when they don't have Kyrie.
Yeah. Well, do we want to comment on that or not? I mean, is that just not worth it?
No, I wasn't trying to segue. I'm just saying that James Harden needs to be James Harden for them to win, especially this season.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I part of me felt like maybe Kyrie was holding out that the mayoral race would happen, and then the new mayor would change the law. But that's not going to happen. They're going to still require vaccines to perform in front of people. So I can't. Can you see a realistic scenario where Kyrie simply doesn't play the whole year because he refused to get the vaccine?
Yeah, I could see it.
I mean, if there was a player that was going to do it, because like Wiggins started out that way, but then he kind of shrugged and it's like, give me the shot. But by the way, maybe the shot was what's made him so much better all of a sudden now and more aggressive. It just looks better, a different player to some degree on the Warriors. But it does feel like Kyrie's a different bird here, right? A different mindset about what he wants to do or what he feels like with this vaccine. It's too bad. I mean. I've already gotten my booster. I would encourage everybody out there to get the vaccine. Their data is in, and it's clear that it's much more worth it to get it than to get COVID.
Yeah, I don't think there might not be the leverage there for him. Like, it just depends on how much he wants to get back and play. I don't know. Like, I don't know Kyrie personally, so I don't know what he's thinking. Like, how bad does he want to play NBA basketball? I don't know.
Right. Well, then, and by the way, that's an interesting parallel to Ben Simmons, who, it might not be so clear to us. Like maybe I don't know if he loves basketball. He might have just gotten really good at it at a young age. The father maybe pushed him a little bit, and here we are, where he's dealing with mental issues or mental motivation and how to overcome that. By the way, the leverage that Simmons could have used was not to get the vaccine and then say, "Well, I'll get the vaccine if you trade me." I wonder if that would have loosened this up a little bit more, because I think part of it is I don't know. I think certain teams would definitely offer to get him anyway. So maybe I wouldn't do anything. I
would never even think about that, Coach Nick. That's an interesting take.
Yeah. I don't think it mattered. I don't think that would matter because let's just say he wasn't vaccinated. Right. If he wasn't vaccinated and you were the Nets, for instance, you wouldn't want him because he wouldn't play for you either. But you could then say, if you trade for me, I will get the vaccine, and then maybe that would get them excited. They'd offer a little bit more to get him, and then Morey would actually give him up. It's a strange situation. We've never really had a player demand to be traded with 4 years on his contract like this, right? I mean, this is generally it's the last year of the contract, and whatever he's worn out his welcome. But I've said this before. I think the mistake has always been that. The Sixers, they should have recognized a couple of years ago that this pairing wasn't going to work. I felt that, and I think we're now clear that that's where we are at, that it wasn't going to work to get them to a title. That said, the argument would be, well, without those 4 bounces on the rim by Kawhi against Toronto, then they would have gotten to the finals, and then maybe they win the whole thing, and then that's a moot point.
That's when they had Jimmy, who's playing
right.
like an MVP type player at points this season. So
so there was a very narrow window, where Jimmy kind of did it, and maybe no other player in the league aside from like a LeBron would have been able to make that. Those 2 square pieces fit into the round hole. But with that not working and Jimmy being gone so quickly, yeah, then what they're left with now, clearly, I don't see any path to them getting any farther than they've gotten before. And so here they are. I mean, it's too bad they got this far, but those are the two storylines I would wish we would get resolved ASAP. I would wish to just get Simmons somewhere. Yeah.
You don't want to see players not playing their prime. Like, nobody wants that to happen.
Yeah, it's been bad enough that the last several years have had major injuries to all these stars, and that must be the other reason why like the ratings were down. As far as I can tell, the ratings are up, and certainly for my channel, the ratings are back up. It's been a slog for 2 years, and all of a sudden, people are coming back and they're enjoying the videos, and I'm certainly enjoying all the storylines.
Maybe they heard Combo was coming.
Yeah, but that must be it. Combo makes everything better. Hey, speaking of which, do you want to weigh in a little bit? Like, I know you played and you have another level of a perspective because you played. Tell us really quickly, like where you played and what your experience was post college.
Yeah, I played. I started out in the ABA after college, and then I played in Israel for many years. The biggest club, which you might have heard of, was Hapoel Jerusalem.
Sure.
And then I played a year in Denmark as well, which I really loved. I loved that country, and yeah, it was a great experience. Like the way they look at basketball overseas, as you know, Coach Nick, is totally different, and it kind of gave me a different perspective, not only on the court but off the court. So it was a great experience, and it lasted about 10 years. But the way they look at basketball overseas is just totally different. But I think because of social media and YouTube and everything, it might be blending in more than it ever has, like maybe becoming somewhat closer together as sports. Because when I first went overseas, like they had the trapezoid lane.
Yeah, wow.
It was like they had a funky three-point line. And, I think in 2010 they started changing that. So, yeah, it just gives me a different perspective on the game.
Well, I remember when I was in college, I went abroad and studied at the University of London, and I practiced with the club team there, which so all the rules were, in the 90s, the EuroLeague rules, and I loved that 3-point line because that was back then it was beyond the 19.9. It was probably 29 or 21 something, whatever. And I loved that. It was just like because it wasn't a 24-footer like the NBA, and you can just let it fly. You know what I mean? It just really felt comfortable to shoot that from that distance. And so, and then there was almost like a soccer element to it. That then too we play where I'll never forget coming down. It was a 2-on-1 fast break, and I'm the one. And I go to stop the ball, somewhere near the top of the key, and all of a sudden I'm looking at the ball, moonshot over my head, landing right into the guy's arms right at the block for a layup, and having no idea how you're supposed to stop that, and having never seen that before. So the notion that you can lob these passes, 25 feet in the air, probably look how they do it in soccer, right? You kick it up and high over the defense and let it drop. That kind of influence was really interesting.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. So actually, we played soccer in practice often.
Oh, really?
It was interesting. Yeah. And you're right. You just saw so many things over there that you never seen before. Like that was really when I first started seeing players who would shoot off the wrong foot, quote unquote, more often than they would shoot off the right foot. So that was something interesting. Yeah, and also like the soccer element is real because when somebody gets hurt, like they roll around on the floor for an hour, like they're more hurt than they are. We see it with Luka a lot still to this day, so maybe they're still doing it.
Yeah, well, either way, whatever they're doing to teach shooting across the board on Europe, it seems to be a lot better than what they do here. Although I
would say the best shooters here are just as good as the best shooters there, but on average, they're better shooters. Like there's not a lot of bad shooters.
Right. And the forms look good. So they understand something. I need to get over there. And, I'm trying to put together something where it's like a show when if COVID ever gets, completely calm. And I go into different gyms in different countries and figure out what are they doing and what's their culture around basketball.
I can tell you, they teach a team concept of basketball at a younger age. Okay. I think it's more individual based at our age,
Yeah.
And I love skill development, but it's more here like dribbling around codes and working on players as individuals. And they're learning team defensive concepts at like 8 to 10 years old. And they're also a lot of those teams are attached to the pro team. So like they have a pro team, then they have the 19U, then they have the 14U, and they're learning from the players above them who are, high IQ players and great players. But I think they teach the game from a team concept ideology, I would say, more than they do here.
But by the way, individually though, with the jump shot itself, I think that there must be something that they're doing to understand better how to teach it. Even with Giannis, when he came in, his jump shot looked really nice because he came from Europe, and then we destroyed it here. And maybe he's getting it back.
Well, I think he got really big up top, right? That was part of it, probably.
No, that wouldn't explain to me this stuff that he's doing with the weird jutting out. I don't think so, especially because it started happening before he got completely big already. Somebody went in there and said, I'm going to fix your shot, and then destroyed it. So
you're right. He was shooting off the dribble. I remember watching him play, and he was just shooting off the dribble.
Yeah, I did a video last year about it, and I have all his clips from his rookie year, and then also some clips from Europe. He had a beautiful jump shot, really good rhythm, and they destroyed it. So, and by the way, that's what's going to stop him from being the greatest of all time. If he could suddenly develop a 36% three-point shot, then I don't see how you stop him, and then I don't see how he's not the GOAT. After when he's all said and done. So
the energy transfer was looking a little bit better in the beginning of the season, right?
It was, and it's not surprising that it might revert, but it certainly. Yeah, the head wasn't flying back as much either, and then the free throw stuff. So we'll see. There's still time. He's still young, and that's the one thing you can kind of count on in the NBA generally. If you want to say anything definitively, is that 3-point percentage tends to go up over the course of years if you last that long in the league. So
what are your thoughts? Do you feel like you should make gradual changes over time, or kind of like stop focusing maybe for an off season on other parts of your game and really just change the jump shot, because you are going to revert back
right
if you play your sport, which is so important to staying in rhythm and staying in flow and staying in shape playing your sport.
Well,
so, what are your thoughts on that? I think minor adjustments can work over time. Like, I've done it with myself.
Yeah, I'm into minor adjustments these days because we are getting better at teaching overall, so we're not seeing as much of these crazy forms that you'd have to redo. Now, Lonzo Ball, you want to do what they did, which is completely redid his shot. That is the first day of the offseason, right when your season ends. You got to do it, for hours and hours a day for months and months. You would never try and do what they ended up doing like during the season, right? That you could not afford to do that. So if it's a major overhaul, you need to have X amount of months of pure focus on it to make that happen. But a lot of the times for me, I'm just tweaking rhythm and alignment, and that's what I need right now. The more I learn about shooting, the more I learn about teaching shooting, the less I do in reality. I used to do so much more and torture players, and it was a nightmare for them. And it's funny because I still hear it's like D1 shooters crying on my shoulder with nightmare stories about what their coaches made them do that ruined their shots. And that's another thing we need to fix in college. The college game and individual development is still years and years behind. Next Level has another super chat. Thank you so much, friend of the breakdown. Next Level says, we need to start having this discussion. Where does Steph Curry rank all time, and where do you see him ranked when it's all said and done? And is he the second best point guard of all time or one? Well, you know what? This is a good time. This is a good thing we can finish on. Bookends. We started the Warriors, so we can end this with the Warriors. There's a lot of slander about Steph Curry for a lot of reasons, right? And it's really kind of frustrating because some of them are not even about like his performance on the court. But the bottom line is there's something wrong if you are going to say that he's not top 10 of all time, in my opinion.
If he retired today?
Yeah, let's just say if he retired today.
I don't think I would have him in my top 10.
There's something wrong with you.
Well, would you have Kevin Durant in your top 10?
Yeah.
To me, Kevin Durant is higher on the list than Steph Curry. That's just me, though.
That's interesting. It's hard. Listen, they both. And then this is where the list comes in. Okay, then who do you have to get rid of?
Exactly.
And that's interesting. But I don't know. As far as the effect on the game,
do you think Steph Curry is a better basketball player than Kevin Durant?
I suppose if you want to factor in defense, no. But if it was offense, I wouldn't feel that bad saying that he's as good or better than Durant. It's the defense that separates
defense
Durant.
Is part of the game,
right? And it's not fair to Curry because Durant's 7 feet.
It's funny when you watch Kevin Durant play. It's hard to imagine a player that could be better, if that makes sense. When you actually watch him play basketball, it's crazy.
Right, but then you watch Draymond Green guard him last night, and he made him look very mortal. It was very strange to see him miss those mid-rangers that he normally just shoots right over everybody. But Draymond,
do you think you've played basketball before, Coach Nick? Sometimes somebody didn't stop you, you just missed the shot. What did you see? Did you feel like Draymond was stopping him, or you feel like Kevin Durant was just missing shots?
No, he was on the release. Draymond had a hand, was touching the fingertips on the release. He was not giving him anything, even to the point where there was a foul in the left corner in the first half, I think, where that was almost I think Durant was like, dude, you got to calm down. I felt like he was like, you're too hyped for this. Let me have an inch. and Draymond was giving him nothing. And then there was also a team effort too, and with the triangle and two stuff, that also will go a long way to not letting those guys get off and daring everybody else to shoot. But there were several plays where I felt like Draymond was influencing those shots. And that's funny because Durant's shot is a 2-motion shot over the head. I don't want to say it's a slow release, but by the time it gets up there and out, and if you're really giving out, you can get there and kind of, make him think about it a little bit.
It doesn't really happen too often, though, Coach.
Right,
Nate.
Especially because it's such a high release, and he's been able to figure out how to not get affected.
That's really the reason why he's so unstoppable. Because even if you usually play great defense, he could just shoot right over.
Right, and so Draymond is one guy though who's got a 7-foot wingspan, and he's about 6'8", where he can get in there.
Yeah, to take it full circle, I just mentioned I think he's one of the greatest team or help defenders ever, and he's really great on the ball as well. So he's just like an all-time defender.
Yeah. So you'll have to probably give it to KD for the defensive side. Although, again, I think that Steph has always been very underrated on the defensive end. And, remember, I even did a video on him 3 or 4 or 5 years ago that was might have had a little bit of the title was a little bit trolly, but the point was that Steph needs to be considered a better defender than people want to say he is. LL, though, we have another super chat. Thank you so much. We're about to end this pod, but hey, we get it in here. He goes, or they say, is better to have a small ball center like Blake and AD, or a 7-foot center able to guard perimeter and shoot like KG? Also, which is better, tall or small ball? Well, I went to see the Bulls play. That was who the Bulls hammered the Lakers, and they literally were so small that they had, how small were they? They had Derrick Jones Jr. guarding AD. They had Lonzo Ball guarding AD. That was their center on the defensive side, and they were having success with that. So, I in this day and age, unless it's Embiid or Jokic, you can get away with, a center who has a little bit of strength and is 6'6", 6'7", because you're not going to get back down too much and scored on.
Yeah, he said AD's not a small ball center, though.
Yeah, right. Especially in this modern era, no. But, he doesn't like to play center, so it's like...
Yeah, he really doesn't want to play center, but I think it's beneficial for them. And then Russ should be playing the 4. In my opinion.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem. Russ is at his best when he's got 4 shooters around him. Well, you have AD and you have LeBron. Those are those guys are not shooters.
Those guys could be plus shooters in the right situation, right?
Yeah, it's not consistent enough. Not like you're talking. When I say Russ is best when he's got 4 shooters, I'm talking about like 4 JJ Redicks around him or whatever. That kind of thing. 4 KDs. Certainly you can't put LeBron or AD in that category, and then all of a sudden you get beyond that, and there's some other players they're putting out there that are not those guys either. So Russ is going to be suboptimal anyway, just by personnel, and then he starts doing some of his stuff, and it's like, oh, I can't. It's just the volume, it's the number of plays that he makes, plus some of the turnovers are. I remember somebody once tried to get into an argument with me on Twitter about, in a real snooty way, saying, "Oh, I didn't know there were some turnovers are worse than others." And I'm like, "Yeah, they're the kind that you throw into the stands, and the other kinds that, like, the defense made a really good play and knocked the ball away and got a turn, got the steals." It's like,
well, yeah, and also there could have been. What if you have Joe Harris in the corner and you throw it to the, to the wrong team, and then that's a 5-point swing right there? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, when fans are fans, it's hard for them to see any, you never want to meet your heroes because then you realize that maybe they're not as amazing as you thought. But listen, Combo, we're getting long in the tooth here, although a ton of people are still here. This is amazing. I guess, this is a good test. I was wondering what would happen by recording live during the Wednesday night slate, which
Coach
is like
Nick
everybody
had no
playing.
faith in me. He wanted to give me a pilot episode.
Yeah.
Come on, Coach Nick. You didn't believe in me, man.
Hey, well, did you drop the gauntlet, and everybody out there on YouTube is here for it. So this is great. So let's do this every Wednesday. If you're available, I'll be available, and we'll knock it out of the park every week.
Let's get it done. I think this is a great time.
Eric, EH Chaser, another super chat. We're getting multiple super chats from people tonight. Amazing. He says, if Steph leads Golden State to a chip this year, where would you rank him then all time? And I think he would rank higher than late, great Kobe if that's the case. I already rank him higher than Kobe. I'm sorry, Kobe fans. But, listen, if they win a title this year.
I can't rank him. I can't rank him higher than Kobe right now.
Really?
Right now.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Kobe has, I don't know, some history's been rewritten a little bit, I think.
No, it's not. It's not that with me, because I'll be honest with you. When Kobe was playing for like 10 years of it, I was overseas and games were at like 4 a.m. So
yeah.
I wasn't able to watch a lot of the great Kobe stuff, so it's not even like that with me. I just think Kobe was Yeah, I don't think you could put Steph above Kobe.
I mean, Steph's gravity and what he does in the offense and the way he tilts the game. And again, he's so radically changed the game. And there's only there's 4 or 5 players
also,
total.
Kobe's defense was elite.
It was in certain stints, but not always. He got by on his reputation for several years, and he
played 20, Coach Nick. So every year he didn't play defense. I mean,
but I had to get into it and improve it with video for a lot of those years. But anyway, we don't want to crap on Kobe right now and sully his good name.
That's not what we will not. We will not, Coach Nick.
I actually, it's funny. I always was frustrated watching him play. I remember I'm a triangle offense coach, and it's always frustrating to watch a guy not want to want to play the triangle and not to play it properly.
You think the triangle could work in the modern NBA?
It does. We see it. It's happening all over the place. So yes, I saw the Clippers are running it in pieces, and so are the Spurs and the Warriors use blind pig. So we're still seeing it. Any kind of pistol action is out of the triangle. So it's all still there. I think the key
it's a little bit more spread out though, right?
Yeah, for sure. And they've eliminated, you won't see a guard throw the ball to the wing and then cut in front of him to the corner. That just takes too long. The wing can't attack on the catch, excuse me. And, so there's things that were just old school that they needed to get rid of. But any of those plays where you see the guy throw the ball to a player and he follows his pass back for a little handoff, that's all triangle offense stuff that just tells you that it's still a viable actions and people are just taking little bits and pieces of it. I think the key here, it's like what the Warriors do is automatics. They teach automatics, which is sort of the whole thing about the triangle was if you're there and the ball's there and it gets past there, you cut there. They have
read
automatics.
And react.
Yeah, but it's more structured. So you know at any one time, you have these rules that you play by. Now, once you establish the rules and everyone understands how to play by them, then you can kind of break them a little bit here and there. And Steph is the guy who does that the best. But in reality, when you teach your progression of offense in a certain way, and I don't think everybody does this, then that's what the triangle offense was. So a series of progressions with angles and spacing that was triggered by the ball movement. And not enough offenses do this. And so you can build a very organic, that looks like you're not calling plays, just like the triangle you weren't calling plays, but have it more resemble what we're seeing with spacing. So that's what the Warriors are doing. And I did a video on it already earlier. And so if you want to watch it, you can check out what we're talking about. And I'm sure I'll do something else more about how to teach that stuff for coaches. So stay tuned for that. Another super chat. You guys are just under the wire here coming in here. This is amazing. NBW Doughboy, friend of the breakdown. Charlotte just beat the 2 best teams in the NBA. They did? Who did Charlotte beat tonight? Who's the other best team in the NBA? Let's see here. Let me open up my NBA app here. What day is today? Wednesday. Charlotte they beat the Wizards. Okay, stay tuned for a Wizards video. And if you won't believe me, but I was going to do a video before the season started saying how good the Wizards were going to be. And I was sort of talked out of it by someone connected to the team. And I'm mad that I did that because I would have been way ahead of the game as they are. Even though they lose, they're going to be 10-4. No one would have called that. And 10-4 is that's 14 games. It's a big sample size, and they've got some good players from that Russ trade. So, but listen, Combo, we got to call this. I might have to go take my daughter to the Harry Styles concert.
Okay. Well, thanks, Coach Nick. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
And thanks to SeatGeek, by the way, for getting tickets, awesome tickets for my daughter to Harry Styles. So I got to give them a sponsor and a shout out.
Shout out to SeatGeek. Send Combos Court some tickets, all right?
Well, hey, make a sign, and we'll do the next pod. Get tickets for Combo, SeatGeek. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much, Coach Nick. Really appreciate it. This was a fun conversation. You in?
Wait, now come on. That's my line. You can't be stealing my line because I got to sign off with that. But guys, if you really enjoy this, great. You're going to have Combo on 2 weeks from today. Every other Wednesday we'll have Combo on. I got another co-host come on for next Wednesday, and then they'll battle it out for who gets best ratings. No, we're kidding. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, thank you, Combo. Awesome conversation. Truly awesome conversation. Making me excited to come back for the pod, which I hadn't done for a year because I couldn't find a suitable co-host. So this is great. Thank you for being there. And don't forget, sports fans, the B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Combo?
I'm in, Coach Nick.